So I'm Tori and I'm an implementation manager that works for the NSPCC. And this is Emma.
I'm Emma. I'm a facilitator of babysteps and operational lead for Wiltshire.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is just give you a little brief bit of background about where babysteps has come from and why it was developed. And then Emma will take over and talk about the Wiltshire site, but we do have a bit of a tendency to butt in on each other because we have delivered before together. Okay, so babysteps was developed in 2011 and that was following a Department of Health commissioned systematic review that was Birth and Beyond, which looked at antenatal education. And the review kind of said that the antenatal education at that time was highly medicalised, unlikely to engage the most vulnerable, and it was quite patchy, so there was no consistency, and a lot of it wasn't particularly evidence-based. So a professor, along with some people at Warwick University and NSPCC, started to come up with a programme that they thought would be more consistent and to be able to build some evidence around this. And it initially was targeted for vulnerable families. So it was research-based and evaluated on its outcomes, and I think it was evaluated in the NSPCC for about 3,000 women and their partners. And now, after we'd run it for several years to work with all those families, we've started a scale-up programme. So that means that other sites within the United Kingdom have started taking it on and implementing it in their area. And that's what my role is to help those areas implement it within their sites. So it's in 8 different sites. 3 of those sites run it universally. Even though it was initially made for targeted, they run it universally. So they are Blackpool, Jersey across the whole of the island, and Lambeth are just coming on board in London, so that borough will also run it universally. And then targeted are Leeds, Bradford, Warwickshire, Swindon and Wiltshire. Okay, so babysteps is a perinatal parenting programme, and it says for parents who would benefit the most from extra help, and I kind of think that's all of us. And I think, you know, the thing for babysteps, and that's why it can work in universal areas, is because every time you have a baby, it's a new time point in your life where loads of things are changing, and it's a really big thing. But the overall aim is to optimise parents and babies' health and well-being, promote protective factors around sensitive parenting, and the aim is, all the evidence is around attachment. So it's to promote that secure attachment. And essentially, we do this by engaging meaningfully with the parents. My background is as a midwife, so I know how hard it is being a community midwife and working in clinics and working on the wards. This helps people have a consistent person for several weeks that they know they can build up that relationship with, so that they can start to get some trust and ask some of those harder questions. As I said, it was designed by Warwick University, and what happens is, to help engage those most vulnerable families, we do a home visit first. We find that that helps engagement. And then there's 6 antenatal sessions, which you'll see next slide on, I think, shows a breakdown of those. But it doesn't just cover the traditional antenatal education that I might have provided in a class. So it's not just about the mechanics of birth and different pain relief. It's about the whole transition to parenthood. And then, it's, like I say, it's a group setting, and the group then will break until all the babies are born. We then do a home visit to go and meet the new baby and welcome them to the family, and then once all the babies are born, a date's agreed for the group to recommence for 3 postnatal sessions. This is a bit of a wordy slide. So for each session, for each programme, there's 2 dedicated workers. One will always come from a health background, because again, you know, the reason we're talking today is about working together in partnership. So one will always come from a health background, usually a midwife or a health visitor, and then the other person, when we trialled it in the NSPCC, was a social worker, but out in the real world it's generally something like a family education worker. And these help build that consistent, trusting relationship. They offer participative techniques to motivate and influence behaviours. And again, they engage meaningfully with mums and dads throughout the journey. So that's a really important part of baby steps. And this has been a theme throughout, I think, the whole of the days, talking about dads and how important they are. So it's not just about mums coming along, it is about dads as well. Dads have come along on their own if their partner's not wanted to come. And obviously, we have same-sex couples and lots of different makeups of family. But we are encouraging dads to attend as well. And like I said, there's lots of evidence that underpins it around infant development, health and well-being. And then we are able to identify and refer on for additional support if that's needed, because sometimes it is with the families that we work with. I don't know if you can see that slide very well, but that shows a structure. So the home visit, and then there's the 6 sessions. So the first one would be about how our babies are developing, getting them to think about the babies and what they might look like. So for lots of families, they might not have thought about what the baby would look like. And this is all ways to try and help that attunement and attachment with the baby. And then session 2 goes on to health and well-being. How do we feel? What's normal within pregnancy? What's not normal? Session 3 is about becoming a parent and about the stresses and strains that might happen. And what we've found is if we talk about this in the antenatal period, it's less likely to cause this bigger issue in the postnatal period because people are prepared for it. One of the research findings was, what we know is in the postnatal period, relationship satisfaction very frequently drops. But for families that have done baby steps, it often stays static, or sometimes there is a slight raise in their relationship satisfaction, which is positive. We do have a session about giving birth, and that's a traditional kind of antenatal session where we look at pain relief, positions for birth, feeding. Session 5 is about caring for our babies. Session 6 is about getting to know our babies when they arrive. Then there's the break and the home visit. And then the other 3 sessions, these are planned out, but they don't always go according to plan, because once you've got a room full of babies, they are the people that are most important and they take over the sessions. But it's around bonding with our babies, welcoming our babies, and what do we envisage our future might look like. But as I said, they are much more flexed in how we deliver those, because the babies are the most important people, and that's what we encourage is the families to let babies take the lead on what happens in those sessions. Okay, so I think I'm moving. Emma's going to take over.
Thank you. Okay, so in Wiltshire we are really, really lucky to have this service. Our local authority has taken it on and commissioned it. And we actually run it across 6 sites in Wiltshire, and there's 5 organisations involved. So the juggling is quite interesting at times. We have Virgin Care on board, who provide a health visitor. We've got the Royal United Hospital in Bath, who provide a midwife. Salisbury hosts the programme, so they provide a midwife to facilitate, but also provide programme lead and admin support. And then we still are very lucky to have children's centres in Wiltshire as well. So we've got 2 different charities running our children's centres, and they provide the centres for us and family support workers. So for the 6 sites, there are 2 facilitators covering 2 sites. We've got 3 facilitator pairs, and they're very used to working together. But it's a manualised course. So for each session, there's a timetable of what we cover, and there are suggestions of how we cover it. So it's the same session wherever people attend it in the county. And it is so refreshing to do it. I'm a midwife and a health visitor, so I'm used to being rushed. I'm used to wanting to do more for mums and dads and not being able to. And now suddenly I can. Suddenly we get 9 2-hour sessions with these families to get to know them, to work with them. The support they get from their peers within the group is massive. We have such a variety of people who come onto the course. We've had solicitors sat next to police officers, sat next to teenagers, and it just works. They, you know, I've seen 40-year-old women who have got a health anxiety that they can't face be talked around by a 20-year-old who's out of work, because they're in that shared situation of all having a baby, and they listen to each other. So how do we recruit to the programme? Well, midwives are our main referrers. So they will ask women, typically at booking or at their 16-week appointment, whether they, you know, would feel like they would like this sort of extra course. We also get referrals from health visitors, social services. We're getting some of the social workers on board. Referrals can be for either the mum or the dad. So as we've been hearing lots today, it's a lot about the dads that we're missing. So the GPs may have met a dad who is suffering really with depression, but his wife's never mentioned it in antenatal clinic because she's never been asked, where they can send us kind of a referral. I'm saying that the dads would benefit from it. We've had some self-referrals from women who've known friends that have come along on the course and found it really useful. And we are trying to get the word out there by promoting the programme to midwives and to women on social media. It's a bit of a minefield with Facebook across 5 different organisations, but some of the organisations have Facebook sites and we are on some of them. Reasons for referral. Here are some. I know it's not the clearest slide to read, but the majority of our referrals are because of social isolation and mental health. I think that it tells us a lot about our population, but it also tells us what midwives are comfortable asking. I know that as a midwife sitting in clinic, I don't think I've ever asked anyone whether they've got a criminal record or whether they've ever spent time in jail. But I'll ask people if they've got a good support network around them, and I'll ask them if they've got a history of anxiety, and you know, it's easy questions for us to ask. We engage across the whole area, probably about 50% of the people that have been referred to us. So there is a lot to be said about the conversations that are being had with the women selling the course to them in the first place. We know that some of our barriers have been not social media, but Google basically. If you Google baby steps, the main thread lines you will get will be the inclusion criteria from the original NSPCC group. So people will say, oh, they've been referred for anxiety, but they'll ring us and say, I don't want to come on your course because it's full of offenders and drug addicts. And actually, generally there aren't that many offenders out there, so we don't get many on the course. So how does it benefit parents? And as we've said about enhancing the bonding and the attachment, it's a completely different kind of antenatal education. We sit down with them and we ask them what they know about their babies. So it's on an individual basis as well as a group basis. We're asking them, what songs does your baby like? When have you noticed your baby moving the most? Do you know what your baby can hear? This then leads us on to talking about healthy relationships and not having arguments and getting overly stressed in front of babies, which takes us on to healthy lifestyles and enhancing couple relationships. We really focus on something we call talk and listen time, which we put into the end of each session. And it's about getting very used to in pregnancy, having the small conversations to be able to prepare you for the bigger conversations when they come along. And reminding people to talk to each other now, because they'll forget once baby comes otherwise. Mental well-being, we talk a lot. Session 3 is quite a heavy session where we're really looking at antenatal and postnatal depression, and we talk about it in mum's terms and in dad's terms. So we're already kind of preparing them to be looking out for both of them. We talk about pregnancy. We have a session 2, where we actually draw a silly picture of a pregnant woman, and we get the group to shout out top to toe what all the symptoms of pregnancy are, and the relief on the mums' faces when they realise they're not the only one to have nightmares that are so vivid they think they need to go and see a psychiatrist. It just works in a completely different way because they get to trust each other, they get to kind of know they're safe to ask those questions. When we're teaching the practicalities of parenting, before I did the training for this course, If I was showing someone how to change a nappy, I would have got a doll and put it in front of them and gone through the actual procedure of changing a nappy. Now I get a doll and I put it in front of them and I talk to the doll, because it's a perfect opportunity to show them how important that communication with their baby is while they're changing their nappy. Any questions that are asked within group, we answer through the baby, so that they start to see that the baby is at the centre, and they start to just recognise that it's not silly to talk to them. We'll hold a doll in the group so that people who've never held a baby before, without even realising it, are seeing how you can hold a baby, and they're just starting to build their confidence. And it does provide opportunities to make friends and gain social support. So at the end of the 6 antenatal sessions, they will often swap numbers and keep themselves in check with a messenger group or a WhatsApp group. I'm not going to read out all the feedback from parents, but you can have a quick scan through this. So there isn't any particular group of people that it benefits more, which is why it's been rolled out as universal in some areas, because it really is a good way of building people's confidence up. When we do the labour session, we talk a lot about the role of the birth partners and all the preparations for having a baby, and because it's a smaller group, they can direct the conversations where they need them to go to what's important for them. And we actually used some of the quotes from parents on the Facebook pages because we found that they were more likely to respond, other parents are more likely to respond to those than they are all the blurb that we've got. So there are challenges. Some areas, despite knowing that there is a high need in those areas, we've had low numbers of referrals for. So we are going into clinics there, we're getting pictures of the facilitators up on the notice boards and on the Facebook pages so that it doesn't seem so alien, and we're planning to, with any particularly hard to reach people, go into the end of their antenatal appointments so that there's a smooth handover. I've already mentioned the high drop-off from referral to participation on the course. We know if we can get in to do the home visit, then people will normally see that it's quite relaxed, it's quite easy, and come along to the course. The definition of vulnerability, we challenged that when we did some training for the midwives, because what we were finding was that for a lot of people, they were hearing about this targeted course and thinking it's only the people who go into the specialist groups, and it can't possibly be that lady who works and has got a degree and has got a partner, and but her mum's just died and she's really anxious and she's really low in mood. So we're trying to just broaden that definition, because as Tori said, most people in pregnancy are vulnerable in their own way, because there's so much going on. I think we're getting there. It's been running for a few years now, and I think we're getting there. But it is a constant. I didn't realise this job would be so much in the marketing way. It's a constant stream, but it is very, very rewarding. It's fully evaluated, and we are making a difference. As Tori said, the NSPCC are offering scale-up packages if people want to bring it into their areas, and you can find this on the NSPCC website.